Maurice Spork. Several years ago, the Avengers came at odds with the X-Men over one Hope Summers. But before that, they clashed with one X-Man in particular, Cable. Someone who was thought dead, but really wasn't because this is comics. I'm taking issue with Avengers X-Sanction, written by Jeff Loeb, with art by Ed McGuinness, Dexter Vines, and Maury Hollowell. Let's start with issue number 1 and see if this comic makes us want to turn the page or turn our heads.
The cover to issue 1 sees Cable grappling with Captain America, the former looking very squinted and pensive. Also, he's now sporting an X-shaped scar on his right shoulder, and I can't tell if Cap is looking at the reader or the handgun being discharged right next to his face. The first page is mostly there for exposition, sporting a black background and Cable's glowing eye and techno-organic arm holding his gun. Look, he's ambidextrous! He's described as having sacrificed himself to save his adopted daughter Hope, seen as a messianic figure for mutant kind.
Yeah, but that's only because the mutant population had dwindled below 200 and she was the first mutant child born after a long while. It's not like she did anything epic or important like get facial piercings and order people to compliment her.
It's a rainy midnight in New York as half a dozen Avengers respond to a distress signal from a prison transport headed to the raft, basically a penitentiary for supercriminals. It apparently crashed and released the Lethal Legion, which the team are quick to contain. Cable has pretty well concealed himself beneath a cloak as he mans a specialized sniper rifle, narrating about he's practically only known war, and war sometimes demands sacrifice. Well, he doesn't only know war, he certainly knows cliches. As Cap chases Whirlwind, he warns Falcon to keep back, but Sam says he's faced worse situations, barely finishing his sentence before being shot in the back. The Star-Spangled Man has subdued the villain, only to find Falcon is gone.
It's actually pretty weird that Cap didn't hear him cry out in pain since they were just having a conversation where they could hear one another. If you look closely at the sequence, Cable fired as the lightning struck, so what would have worked better and been rather clever is if he waited a few seconds after the lightning to fire, letting the resultant thunder try covering up Sam's scream. But I guess Cable just lucked out that Steve Rogers wasn't paying attention.
Wilson has crashed in an alley asking for help when Cable socks him and drags him to a nearby sewer, calling him another casualty of war. Off to a cheery start, this comic.
When yesterday's tomorrow is today, it's a challenge to care about anything. Anything other than the mission.
But that apparently changed for him because his daughter Hope gave him a purpose.
Did no one inform Jeff Loeb that Cable was once married and had a son? Or do those two suddenly not count for anything? Also, yesterday's tomorrow is today sounds a lot more satirical than I think was intended.
We flash back to after the last time Cable saw Hope, after getting her to the modern day, and was presumed dead getting back to the far future. His techno-organic side is heavily damaged, and he mentions nothing but ash, which I guess is meant to refer to his surroundings, like the land is burned, but the blank whites and blue hues don't really give the impression of something burnt to a crisp, but rather more snow and winter. Nuclear winter, I guess. In the present day, Cap is following Redwing, figuring whoever took Sam didn't account for his feathery friend. Except Cable totally did. He keeps Steve at bay by holding a gun to his head and saying that if he cracks the stasis tank, C4 will be detonated, killing the Falcon and probably Rogers too. Nate's narration says he admires Winghead, but he should understand how war can make sides shift, and as of now, he's the enemy. As opposed to later, Steve can tell that Summers is in pain and offers to help, but Cable goes and pulls the trigger. Fortunately, Cap is, apparently, fast enough to put his shield up in time.
I've studied you, Rogers. Your focus is split. You're worried about your buddy, the Falcon.
Why are you mentioning his name like that again? It's obvious what buddy you're talking about, and you already called him the Falcon on the last page. Why the redundancy? Why? Why the redundancy?
Nate's romanticized view of the battlefield goes on that you can begin caring about your comrades in arms above yourself when Cap uses a shield trick to knock him down. Because even if this one-time ally is ill, Steve's more concerned with ending his assault on the Avengers. Cable taxes himself with a powerful attack that gives him the upper hand and Cap's shield, until he seizes up and drops his pistol. Cap grabs it and starts firing, but turns out he's not the only one that knows the primary function of a shield. When the gun empties, Nate tries his best Cap impression, which leaves the patriotic discus lodged in a wall. Cap goes for it, only to be body slammed into unconsciousness. Cable flashes back to when he was found by his old buddy Blacksmith, who says the current nuclear winter version of the future happened because Hope wasn't around to save the world. The next page splits between the present and that timeline. Captain America trapped in an inhibitor chair Magneto designed to use against the X-Men, and Nathan swearing to save Hope despite the fact that his techno-organic virus has spread to the point that he has less than 24 hours to live because, again, cliches. Apparently, the ones responsible for whatever happened to Hope are the Avengers, and with his gun again pointed at Cap's skull, Cable vows to go after every single one of them, with the final panel being only the sound effect of the weapon being fired.
Oh good, he managed to find an electrical outlet to charge his laser gun. I mean, he's going to need a charger handy if he's going to go after every single member of a team with a constantly rotating roster that includes Norse gods and rage monsters that have lifted mountains.
Issue 2's cover takes place at sunset by the bay, and it looks like both Cable and Iron Man blame each other for missing their epic high five. The recap page sums up Cable's modus operandi, while saying of last issue, Cable took down Captain America and the Falcon.
It really doesn't bode well for a comic when it can't even get itself excited over its premise or story events.
We begin with Stark fighting Laser, who says an EMP must have hit the transport the Lethal Legion were on, causing it to crash and their inhibitor collars to short out. That gives Tony an idea, firing an EM pulse right in Laser's face, taking him out. But not his suit or nearby electrical systems, it looks like, because Iron Man? Or writing convenience. With assurance that Red Hulk has got this, he takes off after the missing Cap and Falcon. They, meanwhile, are on Blacksmith's freighter. Don't know how a dude from centuries in the future gets a freighter in 2012, but whatever. Cable psionically explains to Cap that he stun-gunned him earlier, because the more he struggles in the chair, the more it scrambles his brains.
But mostly for the false tension for the end of the last issue.
Nate's not planning on killing any of Earth's Mightiest until he has more intel on what they want with Hope. Even if some get a beating for no reason, he feels justified in his drive to protect his adopted kid. And we see what looks like Iron Man armor but with red and purple color schemes. Jump to the future where a young Hope, maybe 6 or 7, walks up to his sleeping and armed Nathan, curious about his mechanical arm. She's alarmed when a sliver of it reacts to her, stirring Cable awake into an imposing stance. It seems to genuinely unsettle the girl, whose fingers look unnaturally stubby here, but we don't get any elaboration on the scene other than narration that uses war as an excuse for why he may not have been the perfect father. Back to the present, where Iron Man arrives at the freighter, which his computer can get no information on. So he knows he's walking into a trap as he finds Cap and Falcon restrained, and the room wired with C4. Cable engages Stark with the previously seen Iron Man tech integrated into himself. Stark doesn't recognize it, but that's because he hasn't invented it yet. He blasts Stark out of the ship and into the water.
Meet the future, futurist.
I also know the end of the next 20 MCU movies. Tell me what I want to know or I'll spoil them all!
The two tussle underwater for a bit, until Tony, knowing the original code all his armors are made with, overrides the future tech Nate's using and fires back with a huge energy shot. Slide to the future, and Nate is ordering Hope to get a move on before the sun comes up, and finds she's put some plating on her arm in order to resemble him. Imitation in this case is not particularly flattering, and he orders her to remove it. She does so dispassionately and repeats Cable's earlier order to move on before the sun rises.
These flashbacks feel like they're just beneath the nominal impact they could have. And I think they'd benefit if we spent a little more time in this future era with Cable and Hope interacting with each other, reacting to each other, getting a bit more in depth with their relationship. That way anyone not familiar with Cable or Hope or the Second Coming storyline they reference will be able to feel more invested than, hey, someone's attacking the Avengers.
Stark flies Summers out of the drink, explaining how he managed to outwit something he hadn't even built yet, only to find his digital DNA had been corrupted with a virus based on the Askani language, something that wouldn't be known for thousands of years. Shellhead is shut down, and it's time for another flash. Well, forward, if you want to get technical. Hope is again a little older, now asking what it's like for Cable living with the techno-organic virus. He replies that he constantly uses his telekinesis to keep it at bay, and learns to live with something that's killing him, making a comparison to a cancer patient. Hope then remarks how both of them were sent into the future to save their lives, but Nate promises he'll never leave her the way his parents had to abandon him. Finally, a flashback page that doesn't feel entirely wasted. Speaking of wasted, turns out Tony is in another inhibitor chair, so Cable can again point out how Magneto used them on the X-Men, blah blah blah. He also points out Falcon's tank is from Weapon X, the program that screwed with Wolverine's brains and bones. He wants to know why they end up in the Avengers' possession when he's attacked from behind by a gun-toting Red Hulk.
I gotta admire a man with a really big gun collection.
Wait, are you saying that the collection is big because of the number of guns? Or that the guns themselves are actually above average in size and capacity? Given comics' history of ludicrously large firearms, I think it's an important distinction.
The last 2 pages are split between 2 time periods. Rulk wanting to know how to bypass the explosives to free the Avengers, and Hope encouraging Nate to fight off an attack from, I guess, the TO virus. Cable seems to mistake the red giant before him as someone he's fought before named Talbot, but while not mentioned here, it's actually Thunderbolt Ross, who got the Gamma Rage Beast treatment himself. Upon recalling Hope at his side and her plea that he stay with her, Nate's head is engulfed in the techno-organic virus.
I made her a promise.
That I would look for Sarah Connor. Wait a minute.
The story is half over, and while there's been a bit of cleverness in Cable's fights, I can't say it justified basically one issue for each Rumble. There were moments where the narration seemed a bit confused and jumbled, but I guess we're supposed to attribute that to the virus taking hold? Maybe?
Tune in next week where we wrap up this story and see if anything worth mentioning happens. I'm the Angry Spork. Man, have I got issues. Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Avengers X-Sanction. Discovering that his adopted daughter Hope didn't survive to save the world from another version of dystopia, Cable travels back in time to beat the information out of the Avengers. However, the techno-organic virus he's had since birth has been advancing and will kill him within hours. So he's 3 heroes down and hundreds more to go. Good luck, Nate!
Issue 3's cover sees a slightly less virus-ridden Cable try his hand at acupuncture therapy while Red Hulk gives him a bear hug, and neither one of them looks like they're enjoying it. After the recap page notes that Rulk is about to put an end to Nate's shenanigans, we open to Cable about 12 hours to live and black hair for some reason, again mistaking his current opponent for Glenn Talbot. This Crimson Bruiser, Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, says Glenn was a good soldier, but he's dead, and somehow Cable can tell that
this Hulk knows weapons.
Finger on the trigger, barrel aimed at a face other than his own. He's an expert, I tell ya.
Cue the surprise attack by Blacksmith, fellow time jumper and Cable's telepathic mentor, as he fires an energy shot from a high-tech staff, and I guess having energy shot right through his shoulder caused him to fire his weapon, and it somehow hit Falcon's tank. Even though there's no sign of ricochet or anything, so I don't know how that's supposed to work. Also, Cable's hair is white again. But anyway, Ross opens fire on the future mutant.
That's all you want, Bug. I never miss.
You have, and I have not.
No, I'm intentionally hitting the wall behind you. I'm a military general. It's strategy. Yeah.
In the future, Blacksmith is wary of trying to alter history by punishing the Avengers for something they haven't done yet. I mean, in their own timeline. The present, whatever. Cable must have let his guard down since the TO virus is advancing at an increased rate, spreading to the rest of his body, when they arrive at the long-abandoned Avengers mansion. Nate figures the past Avengers will have brought this vengeance upon themselves, so the possibly last two people on Earth go raiding Earth's mightiest basement. 3 Magneto-made inhibitor chairs, Iron Man armor integrated with Sentinel tech, as well as actual Sentinels around the platform, Wolvie's skeleton, Gambit's staff that Tony must have modified to shoot energy, like we saw a couple pages ago, and Doctor Doom's time machine. Blacksmith had a lot of time to himself to discover all this, but not why the Avengers have half of it. But back to that Iron Sentinel armor, so to speak. First, Nate says,
Iron Man armor Stark hasn't invented yet.
That sentence makes no sense, since obviously he's invented it. It's there. They even make contextual grammatical corrections in the second next bubble, so I'm not sure how they missed that one. Speaking of, Cable assumes that using Sentinel-type gear can only mean they had plans in place to attack the X-Men.
Not necessarily. There have been plenty of villains out there with mutant abilities, and it's not like they can be expected to only attack areas protected by heroic mutants. How does Nate know Tony didn't realize there'd be a possibility that Sabretooth or Mr. Sinister or whoever might decide to attack New York while the X-Men are busy fighting Apocalypse in a Savage Land or something? It's like Batman having a piece of kryptonite. It makes sense for a trustworthy hero to be able to fend off someone more inherently powerful. But I guess if they use that logic, the story might not happen.
In the present day, Cable psychically attacks Rolk to save Beasmith. With little energy to go, he relies on Big Red's gun, which is apparently powerful enough to force him out the same hole Iron Man was shot out of. Now we go back in time, about 12 hours, while Cable and Beasmith are loading stuff onto his freighter, with the cyborg noting that since the ship isn't destroyed means things can be changed. Because I guess it was destroyed at some point. No context given. As they load up the crates for their assault on the Avengers, Blacksmith asks if this need to save Hope isn't simply for mutant kind, but also about Tyler, the child Cable lost. He says that saving his daughter may not bring back his son, but it will mean that he won't lose another kid. Then Smith up and disappears. In the here and now, Rolk is back with a vengeance, or more specifically, an anchor, which he uses to smack Cable around and chide him for attacking a team of heroes that'd die for one another. Choking him with the anchor chain, he considers Nate just another warrior that's deluded himself with his own special cause, and again wants to know how to free his teammates. Narration says that every soldier reaches a point where all seems lost and dying is the only option, until they try the unthinkable. In this case, infecting Banner's red repaint with the techno-organic virus.
Careful with all those pinpricks, one of those inflated muscles might pop.
Grabbing the big gun again, Cable wonders if his confusion of Red Hulk as Talbot means that Ross doesn't make it to the future and dies here, though he considers it a mercy since he's got the virus in him now, and some of it retreats from Nathan's body since it has a new buffet to feast at. However, he's stopped by the arrival of Hope and Cyclops, summoned by Blacksmith and urging him to stand down. When Cyke tries to free Cap, Nate points his gun at him, warning of the explosives and figuring Smith filled them in on the stakes of the mission, that everything the X-Men have fought for will mean nothing. However, Scott doesn't think his son's return is worth everything he's done in Hope's name. She, however, stands between them, and wow, it looks like Cable's gun doesn't really mean much at this range. Kinda laughable when you think about it. Anyway, she says they both think they know what's best for her. I'm not a little girl anymore.
Especially not if comic artists have anything to say about it.
That's when the final two Avengers that we saw at the beginning of the series appear, Spider-Man and Wolverine, arriving through one of the holes in the ship.
We're taking back the Avengers, even if it means we gotta kill Cable to do it.
Yeah!
Wait, what?
I gotta say, I'm with Spidey on this one. Since when did Logan get so eager about the prospect of eviscerating one of his allies? At least one that wasn't Cyclops. Did Nate take the last beer out of the fridge from one of his previous visits to the mansion or something? I'm not saying I would agree with that logic, but at least it would explain it.
The cover to issue 4 has Cable, again with black hair for some reason, fighting off the latecomers. And also, for some reason, Spidey's in his black costume, the fabric replication, not the symbiote, and Wolvie's in his X-Force stealth gear. Weird. Is this supposed to be some kind of theme? Anyway, the exposition page actually has a couple sentences to say of the preceding chapters, even noting Wolvie's vow to put Cable 6 feet under.
I wanted to be Colossus for Halloween, bub.
An hour ago, the Lethal Legion has been subdued, and Wolvie was leaving them to Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and the Thing to look after until a team from the raft could collect them. Ben Grimm doesn't much like being on damage control, but with Cap and Stark missing, and the LL's transport being taken out by someone who knew what they were doing, they got no choice. It's not long before Logan's tracked Falcon's scent to where he crashed. I guess Red Wing went on a coffee break. And as they enter the sewers, he warns Spidey that,
If I'm right, and I always am, the guy we're hunting isn't going to go quietly.
So Webby McWisecracks might want to sit this one out. But the Wallcrawler actually is serious about being an Avenger, and they proceed.
Wolverine is always right. Something about that just feels wrong. Perhaps because he tends to walk a fine line between skillful predator and raging death beast. Furthermore, how has he not already recognized Cable's scent?
Maybe he's just being cryptic, but you'd think he'd immediately tell the teammate he's so worried about who exactly they're going after. Also, it's really weird to read him using the term potty break. But moving on. Presently, Cable narrates that Hope's presence compromises his mission to save her. Not how, mind you, but maybe he'll get into that later. Logan stabs his cyberized arm, so he'll drop his gun, presenting Hope an ample opportunity to take possession of it and fire warning shots at Spidey, while Logan deals with Cable. Nate, of course, goes, I am your father, and you will go with Grandpa off this freighter right now, young lady. But she's still shooting at the Wallcrawler, who's had enough of being shot at, so he takes the gun. Unfortunately, in doing so, he inadvertently grazes Cyclops and is summarily shot out of the ship.
You can tell there are no hard feelings because he optic blasted him out a hole already in the ship instead of creating a new one.
Despite his claim that he's doing this for all mutant kind, Cable has to be stopped, and Hope determines he doesn't expect to survive this mission. Psychically, Blacksmith tells her that Nate's too stubborn to change his mind, but he can still be countered. Hope finds a timer rigged to one of the explosives. So that's why he didn't specify the danger Hope was in. His narration wanted it to be a surprise. Having been trained and raised by him, the girl knows how he thinks. Unfortunately, one slip changes the time from over 9 minutes to 7 seconds before detonation.
Think like him.
You think she should go back in time, start shooting people, abducting people, all while doing a terrible job at finding answers she supposedly wants? Good idea, let's go for it.
She just rips the timer right out, and fortunately there is no Avengers smearing kaboom. Falcon busts his way free to tackle his assailant, while Psyche blasts Cap and Iron Man free. More troubling is what to do about the techno-organic virus having a series of raging keggers inside Red Hulk. In a fairly clever resolution, Ross simply gets angry enough that he literally burns the virus out with his gamma-level radiation. Though raises the question if that'll be harmful to the non-gamma monsters in the room. Cable is ordered to again stand down, but he insists he's not the bad guy. You know, like a lot of villains think they're not the bad guy. In panels shaped like exclamation points, interesting visual choice, each Avenger gets one last attack in, except for Falcon, before Wolvie's ready to finish the job. Hope says enough's enough and kneels down, holding Cable's motionless body as the disembodied heads of the previously captive Avengers look on.
If I'm being honest, those heads just kind of floating there is just a bit jarring. Maybe because such a visual was more common before the more modern art styles and techniques.
With his son no longer a threat, Scott wants to take Nathan home, despite Wolverine's concerns about his knack for time travel. Captain America is cool with that, so long as the freighter and all the weapons on it are taken in by the Avengers. Psyche agrees, and Spidey returns to make the end of the fight a little more awkward. Later, in the X-Men's headquarters on the island of Utopia, Hope has some almost alone time with Cable's body, asking Blacksmith why he betrayed Nathan. The telepath says his actions were to protect both Hope and the Ascani-san, suggesting that Cable may not be as far gone as he seems. Hope barely lays a finger on Cable when the techno-organic virus leaves him completely in order to infect her. After a brief callback to her wanting to be just like her dad, she's engulfed in the fiery aura of the Phoenix. Though with a beak like that, it looks more like a parrot.
Phoenix want a cracker?
Now 100% virus-free, Nate need only rest and let Hope protect him for a change. On the astral plane, Cable is giving Cyclops the grand tour of the latest version of his screwed-up future, in the event Hope doesn't fulfill her destiny. With the revelation that she's the latest Phoenix, it raises a host of other problems. Despite all that, Nathan gets his pappy to promise he'll do everything he can to protect the girl and make the right decisions in the inevitable war with the Avengers, in the subsequent event, AVX.
So that was Avengers X-Sanction. And it felt like 4 issues of a 2-issue story. 2.5 tops.
Ever been collecting a title and somehow you miss an issue and you can't find it for weeks at least? Yeah, that's what happened to me a few times, and it happened here. Now I look back at all the effort I put into finding that one missing issue, and I question if I should have bothered. The fights with Iron Man and Red Hulk weren't too bad. There is some cleverness to be had, but Falcon doesn't exactly get to show off what he can do with or without his wings, and Captain America's vaunted tactical prowess, not really done much better.
Funny thing is, I had planned to review this story in the first season, but when I went looking for it in my comics, I couldn't find it. I figured I must have sold it off with a bunch of other stories over the years. But when I went looking for comics to review for Year of the Crossover, bam! It turns out it was in the A section when I had previously been looking under X. Unless I really did sell it off and it somehow found its way back to me.
I just feel that a fight that involves taking down a team literally called Earth's Mightiest Heroes should have a bit more weight to it, but it feels more like both advertising for AVX and biding time until the release. No idea why Wolverine's so ready to kill Cable other than figure out why he's doing this. No clue how the Avengers' trophy room and the stuff inside stays so pristine over the course of millennia. The Avengers are subdued so deftly it doesn't feel like more than 12 hours have passed, but I might have been able to overlook that if Cable's plan made any blasted sense.
Let's take a look at the best case scenario for Cable's mission, okay? Scott and Hope never show up. Cable gets killed by the virus, and the C4 goes off, killing Cap, Tony, Falcon, and Spidey. Probably Red Hulk survives, definitely Wolverine. How does this stop the Avengers from doing something that kills Hope when there's still Thor, Black Widow, Spider-Woman, Hawkeye, Ant-Man, Triathlon, Beast, Black Panther, Bucky, War Machine, Hercules, whatever name Carol Danvers was using at the time, and literally dozens of other members that could be called into action?
I get that he was dying, but if time was of the essence, why not go to Tony and Steve directly and say, hey, you know me, I'm buddies with the X-Men, guy from the future? Well, you folks do something that screws up the timeline, and it involves my adopted daughter, so, don't do it, okay? Pinky swear? There are so many ways he could have resolved this like a competent person, but instead, he crashes a ship full of supervillains, endangering innocent lives, attacks people who regularly save those lives, people who clearly know who he is, and thinks murdering them will solve anything. Why? Because that's what being a parent is all about. Apparently.
Somehow I doubt the scene of Cap with a gun to his head or Wolverine trying to gut Cable would fit tonally with the heartwarming music from the end of a Family Matters episode.
Aside from the confusion about Cable's hair color, I thought McGuinness did a good job on the art. He's one of those artists that can make the ludicrously muscular physiques kind of work. I'll also give points for creativity, since both the covers and the individual issue titles both referred to times of day, likely alluding to Cable's declining health, even though he does get better at the end. The fact that Cable also looked like he was showing various facial expressions of being kicked in the crotch was probably coincidence. As for the writing, Loeb kind of fell into a habit he's had in previous works, repeating stuff he doesn't really need to repeat. Twice, Nathan says the virus is impeding his breathing, but it doesn't really appear to slow him down at all. There are repeated references to wars and being a soldier, but they don't quite feel first-hand, more like something that may have had one or more intermediaries relating information. I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong, but there's just something about the delivery that feels not entirely whole. Then there's stuff like tech Tony Stark hasn't invented yet, or attacking the Avengers for something they haven't done, which technically, yeah, this stuff has happened. You're in the future! Splashes and two-page spreads felt underutilized, more like padding than anything else. I will give it this much, though. Spider-Man was consistently funny. Too bad he's about as sidelined as the Falcon.
Nice touch curing the techno-organic virus, though. It might have opened up a whole new world for Cable. But as a means of showing the return of the Phoenix and creating a prelude to two super teams knocking each other's teeth out, it feels a bit bloated. Like a case of soda that has a few empty cans inside. Not terribly recommended. I'm the Angry Spork, and man have I got issues.